Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be presenting two posts from Erowid, a forum board dedicated to personally submitted drug experiences by both first-time and experienced users from around the world. These two stories are about LSD. Let's get right into it. Our first story is called Sailing Solo, and it is by a user known as Bobby Knob. A few days ago, I had my first solo trip. I'm a 20-year-old male in college, and I have had 3 previous trips in a group. It is nearing the end of the school semester, so I had some free time and wanted to trip before returning home for winter break. I live in the campus dorms, not an apartment or house, so originally the plan was to take a light dose, a half to 3/4 of a tab, with a friend here for his first trip. However, he was not in the right headspace leading up to the target date and didn't want to join anymore, so I decided I would instead trip on my own. The night before the trip, I made sure my setting was as ideal as possible. I vacuumed and dusted, shaved and trimmed my fingernails. I bought myself some fruit snacks and a scone to have for breakfast. The following day was supposed to be moderately chilly, and I assumed I would want to go for a walk at some point, so I packed a bag with a hat, gloves, dry socks, a blanket, and some water. I told my roommate and a few trusted friends that I was intending to drop the following morning, just so they were aware, and I tried to keep my mind calm despite my enormous excitement for the coming day. Finally, I measured out my dose, a single tab of tested average strength acid, and got to bed early so I would not be tired in the morning. The morning of my trip was accompanied by a moderate level of anxiety that hadn't been there in the previous days. Many people on the floor who knew me did not know that I was going to be tripping, and I was acutely aware that they could negatively impact my trip if I did not sufficiently avoid them. I also worried about the worst case scenario of being discovered as intoxicated by an authority figure and facing repercussions because of it. However, I felt safe within my room and was not going to have any other drugs on my person throughout the day. So I was able to push past the anxiety and convince myself that I was indeed ready to trip alone. I used the bathroom, got some water, ate breakfast, and spent 15 minutes preparing myself mentally for the rest of the day. At approximately 9:45 a.m., I placed a single tab of tasteless acid under my tongue and let it sit there for 15 minutes before swallowing it. I watched a YouTube video, then started playing Rocket League while waiting for the effects to kick in. T plus 45 minutes. At this point, the trip was just beginning to start. The only visuals I saw so far were more defined edges around objects around the room and around each hair on my arm, as well as extraordinary brightness throughout the room as indirect sunlight shone through a window. Mentally, I felt as if I had just smoked a small amount of cannabis. I felt high, happy, and simultaneously relaxed and energized. I told myself I would wait for the tab to completely kick in before going on a walk, so I put on some music and continued to play Rocket League. My response time had begun to deteriorate, so I was playing against bots rather than online. I was still not playing very well, but I was having a blast nonetheless, and my mind began to wander. T+1 hour. As the trip continued, and I had more time to sit with my thoughts, I was overcome with a new sense of love and gratitude for everything. The music, which had become utterly incredible to listen to, my past self, who had put in the effort to enable this experience, my future self, who I felt a stronger sense of custodial duty and optimism towards, my new friends who I had met in college, my old friends who I had met in high school and missed dearly, my oldest friends, who I have known since 3rd grade and still hang out with when I get the opportunity. I paused here. I hadn't seen these 2 friends for nearly a month at this point, as we all go to different colleges about an hour or two's drive apart. I felt tears welling up in my eyes as I thought of them and how much I missed being with them. But I knew I would see them and the rest of my high school friends when winter break started in a few weeks. so I was able to calm myself down and resist the need to break down into tears in front of my roommate, who was still in the room at this time. Around this time, I also went to use the bathroom, which was quite the experience. I have a social anxiety condition called paruresis, aka shy bladder syndrome, which makes it difficult for me to urinate in public. I could feel my stool moving within me as I passed it, which I never noticed before. The light from the frosted glass window shone so bright, I felt the need to squint. The speckled concrete floor beneath me began to move in contrast in the bulbous shape of a sprawling slime mold. And all the while, I was still thinking about my friends and how much I missed them. Somehow, I was able to juggle all of this and emerge from the bathroom victorious. T plus 1 hour and 15 minutes. After using the bathroom, I continued gaming at my computer and the trip continued to intensify. The hip-hop music I was listening to was saccharine, so much more beautiful and full of emotion and passion than I had experienced it before. If I closed my eyes, I would have been consumed by the music entirely. My visual acuity increased to the point where I could see each pixel on my monitor, rather than the coherent shapes they were meant to represent. Other effects became more pronounced, such as the incredible feeling of a towel as I dried off my hands, or the flowing nature of my desk's wood grain. The wood appeared flat with a boiling texture, almost like aeroscopic fluid being stirred up. Look up a demo video online if you're curious. Not much else of note happened here. I just sat and enjoyed the headspace. T plus 2 hours and 30 minutes. After another hour of just sitting around, I grew restless. At this point, I felt I had about peaked, so I was ready to go take a walk around campus. I grabbed my bag, put on my winter jacket and boots, told my roommate where I was going, and snuck outside through a side entrance so as not to have to interact with people I knew from my floor. There is a common area near the main floor stairwell and elevators where people like to congregate. I didn't see anyone I knew on my way out, and by the time I made it outside, I was home free. The air was dry and gusty, but a comfortable temperature for walking in just a sweatshirt once I got warmed up. I set out on my walk to a park about 1.5 miles away, which I had never been to, but was near where my apartment for next year is. T plus 3 hours and 15 minutes. Soon the air was simultaneously too cold for my feet to be warm and too warm for my sweatshirt to be comfortable. The wind would gust into my face and blow my hair everywhere, and the sidewalks were often slick from freezing rain the night before. Nevertheless, I felt it was gorgeous outside and was happy to not be in my room. As I neared the park, I became more tired, ready to find a bench to sit and enjoy nature for a little while. Unfortunately, though, I neglected to keep my GPS running and ended up walking to the backside of the park where there is no entrance. I trekked about 45 minutes from my dorm through residential neighborhoods before finally giving up on the park and making my way back to my room. My back and legs were starting to hurt, and I didn't feel like adding a mile to my walk to see the park proper. T plus 4 hours. 1.5 hours after leaving for my walk, I finally arrived back at my dorm. I sat on a bench outside at the lake's edge. My building is about 300 feet from the water. To catch my breath, an older Englishman came down past me, tailed by 2 Springer Spaniels. One of the dogs came up to me and sniffed me, and the man told me that he, the dog, was blind. I said hello to the dog and told the man to have a nice day as he called the dogs to another section of the waterfront. I got up and started towards my building, having cooled off and not wanting to interact with any more strangers. As I was walking, though, I thought to myself, wait a minute, why am I avoiding strangers anyway? I just had a normal enough interaction with that man where I don't think he knew anything was off about me. But even if he did know, so what? Why should I deny my authentic self to others? This thought was a kind of ego loss that I was not expecting. My sense of self was fully intact, but my sense of caring how others perceived me largely evaporated. Rather than re-enter the building through the side entrance I had used to exit, I went in the main entrance, waving to the floor mates I saw as if nothing was going on. For the rest of the night, I felt liberated from feeling the need to act a certain way to please others. I had someone talk my ear off about the music that they were passionate about, but I didn't ask or care about, and where I normally would have listened to them to be polite, I completely ignored the person and didn't even acknowledge that they were talking to me. Maybe that makes me a dick, but in that moment I felt no need to give them the time of day when I was disinterested in what they were saying. I returned to my room to rest a little after my walk, and I made myself some hot chocolate and ate some snack food since I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I went and used the bathroom again, and I was once again caught thinking about my old friends. Quietly crying to myself in the stall, I sent them a text to say that I cared for and missed them both. I finished up with that, dried my eyes, and returned to my room. T plus 5 hours. After resting from my walk for a little while, I got in the shower to clean off. Everything others have said about getting lost in the shower on acid is true. I was staring at the water drops forming on and dripping down the shower wall, feeling the warm water cascading down my body for about 20 minutes. I also feel like a hot shower after a day out in the cold is the best feeling ever, so needless to say, I was thoroughly enjoying my shower. Eventually I got out, dried off, and got dressed. T plus 5 hours and 30 minutes. By this point, I had cleaned up and the effects of the acid had substantially diminished. The visual effects were reduced, the sunlight no longer threatened to burn my retinas with its brightness, and I was left with a part of the acid headspace and a mild headache. I took some Advil and, not wanting to sit alone and play games anymore, went out to the common area on the floor to talk with people. Eventually, most of the people were dissipated, so I went back to my room and watched some TV. T plus 8 hours and 30 minutes. Eventually, I went and got some chicken wings for dinner. My roommate went out to his girlfriend's place for the night, so I had the room to myself. I spent the rest of the night talking with friends on Discord and blowing cannabis dabs out the window until finally I passed out around 1:30 in the morning. I don't think there is a way to know whether or not one is ready for a solo trip. I knew there were risks associated with solo tripping on my 4th trip ever, as well as being out in public near my peak. However, I feel this experience was almost entirely positive for me because of my set and setting. Never did I regret having no trip sitter present, nor did I feel like I was out of control of my situation. I am grateful to have been able to have this experience, and I can see myself working my way up to higher doses in the coming months and years. The next story is called 2 Days of LSD Psychosis by the user Sam A. My LSD experience was the craziest time of my life. Literally. Prior to my first and only LSD experience, I had been using marijuana for less than a year, and I had tried coke twice, nothing else. I didn't even drink much before this year. I don't even like using painkillers, and I don't take any prescription drugs. I probably started doing drugs because I lost interest in following the rules, the established order, that had gotten me nowhere. After college, I had nowhere to go. I was the perfect child and student, nothing exceptional, but nothing bad either. After college, I applied for the CIA. This becomes important. After being rejected, I decided illegal substance use wasn't a big deal anymore. I then got a job teaching English abroad where I met a lot of other English teachers. People who thought like me, people who were the most interesting, intelligent, amazing people I had ever met. And they were all drug users. It was because of them and their stories and their accomplishments that I decided taking drugs would not screw up my life. I was very close with Matt, Al, and Rich by the time I decided to try LSD with them. They had all taken acid, shrooms, and other psychedelics before. I trusted them, especially Matt. He was older and more experienced, and I was a little in love with him. We jointly bought a sheet with 10 tabs on it through Matt's local friend. We'll call him John. Of the 10 tabs, I went in on 1, John took 3, Matt and Al each paid for 2, and Rich had the last 2. John took his 3 almost immediately. The rest of us were waiting for the right time and place to take them together. It never came. We decided to do what we could and took them the night of Al's birthday, before some of us left the country. It was Monday night around 11 p.m. Although I originally planned on only taking half a tab, we all ended up taking extra dosages because the effects took so long to kick in. It was about an hour and a half before we felt anything. Bad idea. I took 1 tab, Matt and Rich took 1.5, John took 1, bought off of Matt and Rich, and Al took 2. I was completely unprepared for what would come. I did no research beforehand. I hadn't understood what happened to other people when I heard their stories. All I knew about hallucinogens was that you saw things. I saw some great things. Dragons in the clouds, fairies in the bushes, dinosaurs in the cobblestone. It was all beautiful and animated and great. Then I realized that everything I looked at was far and close at the same time. Everything was big and small. I felt like I was in one of those model train set worlds. I couldn't figure out why they would ever stop playing, and they kept moving. I couldn't figure out how we got from one place to another, but it didn't seem to matter anymore. It was just fun. We all stopped playing and gathered up, not sure why, but while we were all huddled together in a group, one of the locals came up to us. He didn't speak much English. He only talked to John. I tried really hard to make sense of the situation. The stranger was trying to sell us a book. He said it was old, really old. He said he was a traveling scholar, just trying to make some extra money by selling it. This is when my mind started to take off. I stopped seeing pretty fun things. I started getting wrapped up in stories in my head. Paranoia and delusions started here. Why is he here now, at this time of night? Was the best I could say to try to help the group realize that this was a scam. I thought they all understood. After all, no one was buying the book. Except John. He kept talking to the guy, and he almost sounded like he was trying to convince us that this book was worth buying. He's in on it. He got us the acid. He was using his cell phone all night, even though the rest of us chose to turn ours off to avoid freakouts. And he was trying to hide its use. That's why he was so adamant about buying a hit off of us, to make us believe that he is tripping too. He told this jerk where to find us while we are tripping balls. That asshole. Matt sees it. He knows we've been betrayed. He looks ready to kick his ass, but Matt didn't. Other things happened. I saw people in the shadows. They were cops. Now John was an undercover cop, and then Matt was too. Al, Rich, and I were going to jail. Then everyone was undercover but me. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's why Rich kept saying, "I feel like someone's missing." They were all working to bring down a huge drug ring, but they liked me enough that they were trying to find a way out for me. I ended up running away from them in order to save myself. Now I was alone and afraid. I even threw my phone away after Al texted, "Call us when you're safe." I sat down and cried and thought. I thought about everyone who was involved. They were all in on it. Everyone I met on this crazy journey. But wait, that doesn't make sense. Something else is going on here. Something bigger, stranger. Then it struck me. I was never actually rejected from the CIA. My entire time abroad was a recruitment/training process. I had passed. This was the final test. I was in the CIA. I became really happy, laughed at everyone and everything. Everything I remembered about the past, I made it fit into the puzzle. Every book I read, every person I met, everything that anyone said to me, it was all part of some big master plan. I ran around the city looking for clues, playing games, talking to people, entering open doors and climbing on things. All because I believed I was in the CIA. The city I was in had become a movie set, and everyone in it was actors. The city became my playground as I enjoyed justifying everything that had happened in my life. Now all I needed to do was find the way out of this movie set in order to finish this final test. At one point I thought I was poisoned. I thought I might die, but I found an antidote. At other times, I thought I needed to strip naked and run into the woods because of something a friend had said. At other times, I thought I needed to walk home. Eventually, I decided to climb up a brick smokestack in order to see the boundaries of the movie set and to conquer my fear of heights. One of the guys I hung out with in the city, thus he was in on it too, said that everyone has a fear of heights and being alone. Not everyone, I thought, just me. I need to get over those fears. It was about 9 a.m. now. I climbed up the smokestack. I got to the top. It was beautiful. I was happy. But there was a commotion below me. The actors on this movie set had brought out a fire truck, presumably to get me down, but I knew it was fake. I climbed back down. There were police there now. I got to the bottom, and I knew I couldn't let the police catch me. I ran away, but I wasn't quick enough. They caught me and I couldn't get away. Alright, I thought, they wouldn't capture me if I really wasn't supposed to be caught. I need to find another way out of this. They took me into a nearby building. Believe it or not, the nearby building, the place where the smokestack was located, the place I chose to climb up to the highest height I could find, was on the grounds of a mental hospital. I didn't think this was strange. I thought the room they took me into was just another set full of more actors. They asked me if I have ever talked to a psychiatrist. No, I haven't. Oh, I get it. In order to get into the CIA, I need to go through a psychiatric therapy. They told me I have problems, that I'm depressed, that I have a death wish, that I've had lots of doctors. This, I thought, was referring to all of the friends that I had met there. That I'm not normal, that I need help. I thought all of this was about the problems I needed to get over and how I'm special, and that's why I'm in the CIA. A lot more happened to me in the hospital. I was there until around 11 a.m. the next morning. I was in a mental hospital. I talked to mental patients. I acted completely insane. I was completely insane, and I talked to the woman lying in the bed next to me about everything I thought I could consider a mental problem about myself. Except being crazy. The whole time I thought it was a game and or a test. The test/game was to find a way out after I explored my psyche. I was discovering things about myself, but a lot of it was bullshit I thought the CIA would want to hear. Like, not wanting to do any more drugs. They had to strap me down and give me drugs, I don't know what, to get me to sleep. In the morning, things didn't make as much sense, but the fact that I was there in this fake hospital convinced me that everything I had been thinking was true. Eventually, I found a way out like a good spy should. I calmly talked to the staff about how I did not belong here, that if I had problems, they should be taken care of in my country, that I had no insurance, so they should get rid of my freeloading. They had me sign a no consent form and let me go. I walked back to my flat, started packing. The only clue that I thought was right, was that I needed to go home by getting deported. I hadn't eaten or slept much at all. I ate, then slept before actually packing. When I woke up, it was because Matt, Rich, and Al were outside making noise looking for me. They told me they had filed a missing persons report. They asked what happened to me. I lied. I asked what happened to them. I thought they were lying. None of it made sense. I thought I would never see them again. What were they doing here? I was confused and wanted to be alone. But I knew I needed to talk to them. I did. Only a few times did they say things that I could fit into my story. Nothing was making as much sense as it did before. It was about 48 hours after I had first ingested the LSD. I stayed with my friends. I started to think that maybe, just maybe, I could be crazy. But the hospital, that was real. How could that be? I finally asked to talk to Matt alone. I didn't know how to start. I still thought I should be playing the game, not telling the truth. I'm a spy, I think. "What's up?" he said. "You know how you said that if you're really crazy, you won't know it?" "Yeah." "Well, either I'm crazy or you're in the CIA." I looked at him, waiting for someone to finally really confirm everything for me. His reaction was not what I was hoping for. "What? There's no way that's possible." "Then am I crazy?" "Is that what you're asking me?" "Okay, let me tell you why I think that. I'm going to tell you what actually happened to me." I told him. I was convinced, but he just kept shaking his head and occasionally saying, "Fuck," and "LSD is a powerful drug." I was still trying to convince him, but as I went through my story, I occasionally saw myself as other people must have during that time. I got to the end of my story. None of that was real, he told me. He had to tell me again and again. We had to go through specific things. None of it, he told me. I broke down. It took another day before I was fully out of it, before I could think straight again. It's been about a month now. I think it took that long for me to feel completely grounded in reality. I never imagined that I could ever go that far out of my mind. Now I really believe in the value of LSD for psychiatric purposes. I was in a very good state of mind when I took it. The only pressing issue for me has been what to do with my life, and I feel like I received some valuable insight about that, at the very least. In the end, I think it was an amazing experience. Amazing. I faced all of my fears. I realized what was important to me. I realized I do not want to be in the CIA, and considering no real damage occurred, I had a great time. I had the time of my life. I feel like I should never do LSD again. My brain and LSD do not seem to get along, but I want to. I want to play frisbee and see dinosaurs and dragons dancing around in the clouds and bushes. Unfortunately, the fear of going psychotic again is still strong and will probably stop me for a long time. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content and look forward to hearing more trip stories from Erowid and other places on the internet, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Call Yanny.